Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are safe. I hope everything's good. So guys, Derrick James. Guys, before I get into it, sorry about the live stream today. The live stream, my Wi-Fi went down, and I think that's why the live stream started kicking off. So I had to end it. I will try to do another one tomorrow. So I'm really, really sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I think the Wi-Fi just died. It can happen sometimes, you know, and unfortunately the live stream played up, so I had to turn it off. But to get on to what I wanted to say, Derrick James said Manny Pacquiao is still a very dangerous fight for Errol Spence. And I'm going to go into this in a minute, but sometimes in boxing, I get really frustrated. I get really, really frustrated because I have arguments with people online. I put up a video, as you guys know, about, you know, like 7-8 hours ago, about, you know, if Manny Pacquiao beats Manny Pacquiao beats Spence, is he pound for pound number one? And Errol Spence fans started saying, if Errol Spence beats Manny, where does that put him in the pound for pound list? And I said, it's a good win, but he doesn't go number one ahead of Canelo by beating a guy that he's supposed to beat. And then he started saying, well, you know, is Manny a great boxer or not? Is he great or not? Yes, he is a great boxer, but let's not forget he's also 42. Errol Spence is a big favourite according to the bookies. Forget what the fans saying, but according to the bookies, Errol Spence is a massive favourite. Are you trying to tell me that just because he beats a boxer that, yes, probably greater than anyone that Canelo's beat, but that puts him number one pound for pound, even though everybody knows he's 42 years of age? That's nonsense. And Errol Spence has only fought in one weight class. Canelo Alvarez has fought in 4 weight classes. How many former world champions has Canelo Alvarez beat? The reason why I said Manny Pacquiao will be number one pound for pound, because look at what Manny's accomplished throughout his career. And him beating Spence at 40, I don't really want to bring age into it, because if he beats Spence, he's beating a top 5 pound for pounder, and he'd be unifying the division. And with what he's done in his career, you know, even if you look at his last 3 fights, he would have beaten Spence, Thurman, Broner. You could make an argument for him. But don't tell me that Spence should be going to number one pound for pound for beating Manny Pacquiao. No way he should be going to number one pound for pound. Especially when you look at Canelo's resume and what he's done in his career thus far. It's not even close. You know, look at the guys Canelo's beat. Danny Jacobs, Golovkin, Cotto, you know, Khan, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Kovalev, Lara, Trout. You know, he's fought so many guys. How can you say that Errol Spence deserves to be number one pound for pound? And then if he fights Plant in September, which is he's scheduled to do, he'd be undisputed, because most of us think he's going to beat Plant. So he'd be an undisputed champ at 168. Errol Spence has never been undisputed in his weight class, and he's only fought at one weight class. Pound for pound is moving up weight classes. Errol Spence hasn't even fought Terence Crawford yet, who's perceived to be the number 2 welterweight after him, right? Most people have Pacquiao number 3, but Crawford is perceived at number 3 or number 2. Even though, you know, you can argue that. You can argue Pacquiao's better than him, or Pacquiao's got a better resume, he's got a better win in Keith Thurman. But the fact of the matter is that Canelo Alvarez has beaten so many champions. You cannot put Spence at number one pound for pound. Yes, Spence would be in the top 5. But I don't think you could put Spence ahead of, you know, you could make an argument that Spence should be ahead of Crawford if he beats Pacquiao. But if Crawford then beats and dominates Porter, then with what Porter has achieved in the smaller weight classes, you have to say he goes ahead of Spence. And the way Spence goes ahead of Crawford is by beating him. Because Crawford is more accomplished than Spence in terms of achievements. Spence might have better wins at welterweight, but let's not overlook what Terence Crawford did in the smaller weight classes. So this is what I'm trying to say to people, that I think people don't really understand the it really frustrates me, because I know the guys that I was arguing with on Facebook, they're Errol Spence fans, so that's why they're pushing that narrative. But there's no way Errol Spence, by beating Manny Pacquiao, goes to number 1 pound for pound. Does he make a better case for himself that he should be? Because a lot of people don't have Errol Spence in the top 5. So maybe that'll make a case for him being in the top 5. But to say he goes number 1 by beating Manny Pacquiao, a guy that he's a huge favourite against, that's absurd. That's absurd. And I like Manny, and you know I like Errol Spence. But there's no way he goes ahead of Canelo Alvarez. I'm sorry. You know, I've got to get that straight out there. Got to get that straight out there. There's no way he goes ahead. And it's just frustrating when you hear nonsense. You know, but again, those guys, there's no point of arguing with them, because, you know, the Errol Spence fanboys. But in terms of what Derek James says, I do agree with Derek James that Manny Pacquiao is still very dangerous. And he shouldn't be overlooked. He's a very dangerous fight still. And I think that's why they know that this is not an easy fight. Manny Pacquiao's still the guy. And here's the thing. The reason why Derek James is saying what he's saying is because if Errol Spence beats Manny Pacquiao, he doesn't want people saying that Manny Pacquiao was washed, or which is going to happen, by the way. This is what I'm trying to say. Errol Spence, in my opinion, won't get the credit that he deserves for beating Manny Pacquiao, that he should get. And that'll be down to the fact that Manny's old. Now, should he get credit for beating Manny Pacquiao? Yes, because Manny just beat Thurman 2 years ago. But again, when he beat Thurman was a long time ago. He's 2 years older. He was old when he fought Thurman. Now he's 2 years older. So listen, I like Errol Spence. But at the end of the day, you know, it's a fight that he should be winning if he's what we think he is. Right? You can't tell me that a 42-year-old should be beating a young prime guy. Now, can Manny Pacquiao win the fight? Yeah, that's because how great Manny is. That's why I'm saying Manny Pacquiao has a case for being pound for pound if he beats Spence, because of the feat it would be. But Spence doesn't have a case for being number 1 pound for pound if he beats Manny Pacquiao. Not at all. But in terms of it being a dangerous fight, of course it is. It's Manny Pacquiao. Of course it's a dangerous fight. Of course it's a dangerous fight. And does Spence get credit for beating Manny? Of course he does. Of course he does. And does that enhance his legacy, enhance his career? Of course it does. But don't make out that puts him number 1 pound for pound if he wins, because it doesn't. But is it a dangerous fight? 100% agree with Derek James, it is. And is it a case of Derek James trying to say that Manny still was good, this, that, so then it makes if Errol Spence was to win, it makes the win look better? Of course. Of course, but Derek James is a very good trainer. Very, very good trainer. I really like his personality. I like the way he is. I think Errol Spence has got a great, great trainer. Derek James is a very good trainer. Even Jamel Charlo, he's a great trainer for him. Because he's a no-nonsense type of trainer. And he says it how it is. And he seems like a very sharp, shrewd guy. He comes up with good game plans. He knows his boxing. You can just tell when he speaks. He knows his boxing. He protects his guy. He speaks highly of his guy. He's just, for me, a great coach. Just a great teacher, a great coach. And I think Errol Spence and Jamel Charlo have got a very good trainer. And a very good trainer, as we know in the sport of boxing, is very important. Because guys like Jamel and Errol need to be guided. And someone like Derek James, he's a brilliant coach. And I think he's done a great job with Errol Spence and Jamel Charlo. Look, both of them are unified champions. One holds 2 belts, one holds 3 belts. So Derek James, for me, a great coach. And I personally think that he's basically being smart, again, because he's not going to come out and say, man, he's washed and this, that, and the other. Because if he says that, he knows he's going to downgrade his fighter's win. Like, here's the thing with Terence Crawford's trainer, Bomac. He'll come out and say, well, oh, Khan can't take a shot and Kell Brook's washed. And the problem is when you say stuff like that, what you're doing is you don't even know that you're downgrading your own fighter's achievement. Because now if you're going to come out and say, oh, he can't take a shot and he can't do this and he can't do that. Like, look at the way when Errol Spence was fighting Danny Garcia, how Derek James was hyping up Danny Garcia. Oh, well, you know, he beat Amir Khan when Amir Khan was the man. You know, he beat Lucas Matisse, who was a killer. You know, he was bigging him up because he knew if when Errol Spence beats him, that win, he doesn't want that win to look small. He wants that look to enhance Spence's legacy. The same thing with Pacquiao. But Terence Crawford's trainer, he does the opposite thing. He starts ripping into the opponent. So when they beat him, he's already fighting somebody that people think's not a great fight. And then they beat him, and then he's like, well, who did he, you know, he's fought a nobody. So his training doesn't help, whereas Derek James is very smart. And for me, what he's doing is he's basically trying to say that this is a great win if Errol Spence wins, which it is. It is. Because I know Manny Pacquiao is still going to be great. He's still going to be a great fighter and still going to be a hard fight for Spence. Even though Spence should win. Like, even Keith Thurman should have beaten a 40-year-old Pacquiao. As Timothy Bradley said, he couldn't. Manny Pacquiao was too good. And he may be too good for Errol Spence. We don't know. We don't know how good Errol Spence is yet. You know, we know he's good, but we don't know how good. Is this guy going to be like an all-time great? Or is this guy going to be somebody that's a great fighter, but not quite an all-time great? We just don't know that yet. So, personally, I'm excited to see, is Manny Pacquiao going to show that he's better than Errol Spence even at 42? Or is Errol Spence going to rise to the occasion? Anything's possible. But it's a great fight. And do I agree with Derek James, Manny Pacquiao still a dangerous fight? Of course it is. But Errol Spence should, at this stage of his career, he should be beating Manny Pacquiao. But Manny Pacquiao is still dangerous and he could beat Errol Spence. But that's because of how great Manny Pacquiao is. Because how many 40-year-old, 42-year-olds do you know in boxing, in the history of the sport, that could go in against a 30-year-old who's top 5 pound for pound and it's seen as a competitive fight? Not many. Not many. So I think that just shows how great Pacquiao is. But in terms of, does Errol Spence go to #1 pound for pound if he beats Pacquiao? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In my opinion. But that's just my take. Leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think. I just thought I'd give my opinion on it because I totally disagree with that rhetoric. You know, Errol Spence has to do a lot more for him to go to #1. You know, he'd have to become undisputed. And then even then, if Canelo becomes undisputed at 168, you could argue that Spence has, you know, fought in a much tougher division, fair enough, and beaten better fighters. But nevertheless, Canelo's done too much. And here's the thing, if Canelo beats Plant and then goes up to light heavyweight, Canelo could make an argument that he's not just one of the greatest fighter in this era, he's one of the greatest fighters ever. If he goes up to light heavyweight and cleans up at light heavyweight or beats a Beterbiev, he could make a case he's one of the greatest fighters ever. If he goes up and cleans up at light heavyweight, we're starting to talk about Canelo in that kind of breath now. Forget about pound for pound. We're talking about pound for pound, greatest ever. Where does he rank? That's where, you know, that's how the level Canelo would be operating at if he fights at light heavyweight and beats the light heavyweights. I don't think there's any case for Spence or anybody right now, you know, if Canelo does that. If Canelo goes up and dominates at light heavyweight, it's game over. he would have cemented himself. And like I said, I think if he was to do that, you could even make an argument, is he greater than Floyd and Manny? Is he gone on to achieve more than them? You could make an argument for that. Because he would have just dominated at 168. And let's not forget, Canelo's not a big 168. If he goes and dominates at 175, you're looking at one of the greatest fighters ever. That's the kind of level that Canelo would be operating at then. So I think Canelo doesn't get the kind of credit he deserves. But that's just my take. Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.